This meeting was actually requested many months ago. It was requested by myself and other colleagues due to the fact that upon entering Parliament, GEBE had a continuing meeting where we were not able to speak or ask any questions. From then, there were a lot of series of developments that took place in GEBE. However, considering that the problem is not fixed, I think the meeting is still indeed relevant at this moment. So it is important for us to hear what solutions has been brought to the table. Where are we now? As I see, we are still experiencing load shedding. So it'd be interesting to see the current update from the last time we met.
Have been encountering challenges with our utility service to our country. And we started with the ordering of the 10 megawatt containerized containers generators that we commissioned on August the 13th, 2024 to provide an immediate relief to the shortfall of power supply to St. Martin. The power plant consists of 7 brand new containers that are capable together to produce 11.2 megawatt of electricity. The design of this plant is based on the N1 standard for enhanced reliability, meaning that the power plant can guarantee standard 10 megawatt of power even if one generator is down. There is seamless synchronization with the NVGB grid to ensure stable supply to the grid, and there were no technical challenges in the phase of commissioning these containers. We had the preparation phase. I just go fast through it, just to prepare the site to put this mini planet next to the one we know already of GEBE. We had to pour the beams to put the containerized generators on. We had to trench and, of course, make sure that we had the necessary cabling to the containerized generators. We had to work on the connections to the grid from the generators. We had to test them, and the end result is here. We're seeing a helicopter view of how the plant looks from the helicopter side. What you see, the long ones with the black squares on the roof, are the 7 generators. There are 7 of them, as I said. In between the 2 sets of 4 and 3 containerized generators, we have the structure, 2 of them. These are the transformers. And on the left side, you see a black one and a white one. That is the fuel tanks to supply the generators with diesel. We have done with this intervention, we had some immediate contribution to mitigate the situation that we were in. With these 10 generators, we were able to reduce the hours of load shedding scattered over the island. We had a possibility, although limited, to have options to have some maintenance for the older diesel generators that we had on the plant of GB. We decreased the load by using and adding these 10 megawatts to the grid for the existing generators, and we provided additional stability to the grid. If you see this graph, this is an interesting one. We have if you follow the graph, the red one, you see that horizontally we have the days in August, and horizontally we have the axis being the amount of hours of load shedding. And you see, for example, we start by the 1st of August going till a registration of the 27th, and we see a gradual decrease in load shedding over the island, especially when we started on the 13th by commissioning the new additional 10 megawatts. You see still that we had a little hype from the 13th to the 18th going down back to the 19th of August. And that can be explained by the sea surge that took place due to the tropical storm that we had recently. That makes that you get an enormous flow of salt water for the cooling system that is contaminated with debris, with plants that goes through the cooling system, and that gives some challenges with the cooling of the generators. And that's why we had, while we started with the 10 megawatt addition to the grid, still we noticed that we had a slight hype in the load shedding. But after the 19th, as of the 18-19, you see a significant lowering of the load shedding. That, for example, on the 27th of August, you see approximately that we have now approximately 15 to 16 hours a day of load shedding. And how do you interpret these 16 hours? It's about, for example, if you have in St. Peter's 2 hours, in Coal Bay 2 hours, and Simpson Bay 2 hours, together you add them together to have an impression about the amount of hours that you had load shedding in the totality of the community. But the graph shows a significant decrease in load shedding for the community. The short-term solution, that's the second phase that we are in now. We're going to add an extra 20 megawatt containerized generators to the power plant. And these 20 generators are going to be in the form of a lease-to-own financing agreement. The first 10 were by renting them, and the second phase is those that we lease to own on the long term. It helped us because we didn't have such a financial challenge in the beginning to pay off everything. We got a great payoff agreement with the supplier. We even had a 3-year financing agreement to pay back. And the great part is that they're all brand new, 0 hour, just like the first one, the first 10, by the way. And the production took place of these containerized generators in calendar year 2024. The phase 2 power plant comprises 20 containers capable of producing standard 20 megawatt of electricity. And the first shipment left port on August the 28th. The remaining shipments are scheduled tentatively for August the 30th, being today, and the third batch is going to leave September the 3rd. Shipping time will be estimated 5 to 6 weeks, and the installation and commissioning is estimated to take 4 weeks, the same as for the first 10 sets that we need. We needed approximately 4 weeks to get them functional. We are not waiting till we have the third batch to start with the installation. We're going to start the moment we receive those containers. The first batch, we're going to install them immediately and start working on them. And gradually waiting the second batch and third batch, we're going to continue to keep up with the estimated time that we can get them commissioned on the grid for St. Martin. These are brand new. They had to be manufactured, of course, produced. The transformers are brand new also. And this is the site preparation that GEBE is busy now for the second plant for accommodation of the 20 containerized generators. And if you look at the location where they're going to be, it's going to be opposite the Texaco establishment. As you can see, the blue ones are going to be the row of 10 containerized generators. On the second row, you're going to get the second 10 containerized generators. In between the green structures will be the transformers that is going to be positioned between the two sets of 10 row containers. And the other color ones on the bottom of the plant will be the fuel tanks, and then you will have the whole complex united at the site opposite to Texaco.
SZV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SZV is cardless. Request your My SZV account today and enter the virtual office of SZV. Go to szv.sx and sign up now.
SZV, yeah, your social health insurances.
For now, I really just have one question, because this is the second or third time NVGEB has said that they'll absorb the costs associated with the immediate and short-term containerized units until the main power plant's capacity is restored, and that it will not be passed on to the consumer. The first time this was said, I said publicly that I find that very highly unlikely, because there is a cost associated with these solutions, though they are necessary. And if you kind of gauge where the public sentiment is going, persons' fuel clause charges and their overall GB bills have become even more, exorbitantly high, especially taking into consideration all the load shedding that we have had. So if it could be explained again how exactly costs are not being passed on to the consumer, that would be much appreciated for the public's edification as well as our own here in Parliament.
Thanking NVGB via the Prime Minister and through you, for the presentation made and for receiving it also to be able to follow while the presentation was being made. I do believe that the fuel clause calculation is, it's good that it's presented, but something that was mentioned in previous meetings did not come up in it. There was talks about what percentage of the throughput fee that is paid by NVGEB for the transport of fuel. I do not see it reflected. Is it just absorbed in the total cost of fuel, as was mentioned, the total fuel purchases? In the explanation, it mentions total cost, HFO, LFO, and lube oil, HFO, LFO, to generate electricity. But I think we need to be a little bit clearer, because many statements have been made in the past that government could have eliminated such a fee to be able to bring down the fuel clause. And it's also not clearly defining how market prices impact the fuel clause. So I would like a deeper explanation for the edification of the public, but also for the members of Parliament who are here to represent the public in terms of all of the components within the fuel purchases. And then, of course, that will further clarify how the question my previous colleague asked about the not passing on the extra costs. So an overview of what the real current costs are or how they fluctuate. I mean, I think I do have a little more information in terms of when the market price changes. Sometimes GB doesn't adjust right away, and they can explain why that is the case as well.
I'll echo the same sentiments as my colleagues about the cost absorption. As from many individuals within our community, when there was a heavy period of load shedding, there was no power for at least half or maybe third of the month for them, but bills were doubled. So I also would like the clarity on the cost absorption. Furthermore, for another question, what is the remaining lifespan of our current operational generators at the GB plant? And I see in the presentation that moving further, there will be integration of clean energy and renewables. But I circle back to grid market because I've asked questions a few months ago and have received no answers as of yet. It is to my knowledge that moving this country forward in regards to an energy transition will see major roadblocks if this grid market deal is still on the table. We can further go into that once I can at least receive the answers to those 9 questions. I can resend them as well to you, Prime Minister. And this is more of a statement, just for perspective. In Curaçao, there will be a 20% reduction in electricity tariffs, which will be made possible through the full operation of new wind turbines. So that's some food for thought, and that is where we should intend to go.
Really easy to present numbers to people, especially numbers that they're so interested in when it comes to the fuel clause. And what I will say is MP Jacobs asked about throughput fees. So what I wanna explain the net loss, the net sales, and the throughput fees so that it's a little bit more digestible for public consumption. And the way that the fuel clause is built up is based on commodity pricing of fuels, plus the cost it takes for GB to produce electricity in order to sell it back to the public. So every cost included in that would be the cost to obtain it. So if that means getting the fuel from Seoul, which has a built-in price of throughput fees that is paid to government, whether it means that let's say a portion of the chemicals and whatever other materials are made in order for them to produce electricity, that's what goes into it. When it comes to the net loss, every single electricity or water company has net losses. If anyone remembers back in the day with the water company, it was over 30% net losses. So part of the cost of GEBE producing electricity also comes with a net loss for producing it. So for instance, when we had a lot of overhead lines, you would lose electricity that is going to be delivered to people. So what they do is, the way that they measure that is they look at the total amount that they're producing in the plant, and the total amount that is actually charged to people. If there is a difference in the production and what is delivered, that is when you have the net losses. And it's applicable for electricity, it's applicable for water if you have leaks in the lines, in your water lines. So this is all standard practice for utility companies. Let me be very, very clear about that. Now, when it comes to throughput fees, what I want to also say about the throughput fees is perhaps this is a place that government can actually negotiate with our fuel suppliers, because a throughput fee is charged to Seoul, for instance, by the harbor, and it's delivered directly to Seoul in K-Bay. But the harbor is getting that cash, if I understand and remember it all correctly. So usually it's somewhere between $5 to $6 million, not guilders, and that is where you can negotiate and say, hey, is this an area that we can tap into to give relief to the public, but also relief to Seoul, who was there for us when we had a financial crisis with the energy crisis. So please consider two components where you can actually negotiate better.
Social and health insurance is your social and health insurance.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurance.
regarding the civil servant, that
Oh,
is-
yes, yeah. The way it has to go, if there are irregularities, if suspicion of, indication in that direction, you first have to, and there are regulations for that. It's not that impulsively you just do something. First is you have to make sure that you justify the decision of seeing to suspend a candidate, a civil servant first. What they call in Dutch schorsing. And after you have the suspension, you have to give the civil servant a phase of what they call in Dutch hoor wederhoor. So you said this, I say this happens, but you have the right to defend yourself and explain what happened or whatever. As long that hoor wederhoor did not take place, you cannot just like that dismiss people. That does not exist. So in my case, for the cases that I know, there are not so many, we always follow the rules. We suspend a civil servant if necessary, on good grounds, if we think, and then we have to, of course, give them the option of defending themselves in a and we move on till we get to the right conclusion, what the right decision is following the case. That is how it must work, and that's the way I'm working at this particular moment. I cannot tell you how it went in the past, but this is how we are following the rules and regulations.
Prime Minister, I understand you explained me the situation with GEBE, but you haven't said whether or not the appointment is going to take place, whether it's the temporary or the ones that were suggested by the SOAB. You haven't said...
No. First of all, we have the intention to do it. The concept of CEO, CFO, and CEO, CFO, COO, these are all beautiful regulated in the articles of the association of the GEBE. The moment you come with an in-between crisis solution because of the threatening situation that you have yourself with your country, with energy supply, we have to make sure that we pour it in a legal frame, that it's going to be responsible, putting it in a way that legally, that it's in synchrony with the Articles of Association, and that is what we are doing now with some lawyers to make sure that we accommodate a temporary manager with accent on the operation side of the company, to do it in a way that legally the articles of the association permits it to happen. And we all want it, and we are going to work to make sure that it can happen, but you have an articles of association to respect to, and that's why we're doing it. It takes a little more time, but we are working actively on it.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Emil?
Prime Minister, we're going to go in a completely different direction.
Yes.
So as Prime Minister, you're in charge of the civil service staff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the expenses that you have are travel expenses.
Yes.
And in the past, the civil servants have kept the loyalty points, the frequent flyer miles. Has government considered not opening a government account and accruing those miles for its use, which would help to reduce its travel costs for people visiting, going abroad? They could use their miles for their own use instead of leaving them to the actual person who's flying.
Yes, it's by the way a good idea. I didn't even thought about it, but thank you for the incentive. It's a great idea to think about. Everything that we can save some money on now, it would be great for the government of St. Martin. And actually what we're looking into also is it really necessary for somebody to travel? At the other side, you have to be careful though, because you're an island surrounded by the sea, that you do not isolate yourself while the world is further developing itself. And because of financial restrictions constantly, you are actually limited in integrating in the process that contributes to evolution of your country. So it's a difficult balance, but you have to sometimes say, okay, we have to do it, let's go for it. And sometimes we say, no, we're not going to do it because it's, for example, there is an ICLAC soon coming in Trinidad. I'm going to send one person to represent because it's important. It takes place in Trinidad, but I'm not going because it's too much expenses. You try to mitigate a little to control your costs through your expenses for your country, actually.
The third, you say that report on the energy future for the country, with energy nautics after the TNO report and the grid market roadmap.
Yeah.
What constitutes or what will determine which advice you will use, and where the country doesn't currently have the money to invest in these energy solutions. There are tens of millions available from the European Union to use for sustainable energy, for wastewater and all kinds of other projects. What stands in the way of seeking the cooperation with the French side to make use of these funds?
First of all, when I became a leader in this government, I realized that everybody knew about to support, to subsidize, to finance project. But when you went in details into it, nobody knew how it exactly worked, because it's a very complicated procurement to get money from these European funds. And I have put attention to this, and I realized that we always talk about all possibilities. No, you have subsidy for that. You can go to the European side of the story, and they're going to help you. And nobody knows exactly how that works. So I have now delegated to the Minister Plenipotentiary in the Netherlands that she is going to make a work group and going to exactly analyze the procurements necessary to approach each fund that we think that we have right to apply to. And if you don't structure that, you will continue each year talking about enough money there in those funds in Europe to help us. And everybody knows there's something there for us, but nobody knows exactly what is the right way, the right procurement to follow to get those monies to help our country. And I realized that, and I said to my minister, I think that's a great task for a minister plenipotentiary as an extension arm of the prime minister and thus from the country. I want from now on for us to focus on do an inventory about what is actually what we have right to, and make a guideline textbook. Okay, this is the way to approach this fund, this is the way to do it on the other way. And we're trying also to do it in cooperation with organizations in the Netherlands that are accustomed to work with these funds too. So the fact to approach them sounds very easy, but they have never been approached in the past because nobody knows exactly how it works. And I said that has to stop. Now we have to get clarification in that.
St. Martin and the other islands have already gone through this process with the national energy policy in 2014.
Yes.
There was a lot of money attached to that.
Yes, and today we are 10 years further and we're in a crisis today.
Yes.
So you have to ask yourself, did we do it good in the past?
But there was money attached to it, and it came with the advisors.
Pardon?
It came with the advisors from the EU to advise you how to make use of the funds.
But if nobody picks up the advices from 2014, and 10 years today you have another leader with another government, you can talk about something that happened in the past, but if nobody have done anything with it, I cannot help that. I have to just realize now something is wrong. And I have the feeling that we're missing a lot of money that we could get for our country, and that's why I said to Mrs. Gracita Arendel, that is now in the Netherlands representing us as the Minister of Minister Plenipotentiary, for please.